everyone. So now it's time to turn our attention to the future of the workplace, where collaboration and innovation should flourish, and where collective goals align. So today's world presents a real paradox, because people want more autonomy and freedom, and at the same time, they seek stronger inclusion and cohesion in teams and organizations. So that's why the question of this session is, how can companies build trust, cohesion, and share value, ensuring that everyone, especially women, feels included and valued? And it's especially crucial at new technology like AI can either disrupt the organization or, thanks to our speakers, we'll see how they might reinforce cohesion and inclusion. So we are honored to have Alexandra Soto, Chief Operating Officer at Lazard, Emma Code, Global Chief Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Officer at Deloitte, and Doris Birkhofer, President of Siemens France. So let's get started with a quick ground on trust, the foundation of any successful workplace. What are the absolute must-have for trust in the workplace? So tell us in just 2 or 3 words, what are the essentials? Alexandra.
I start, okay.
Yeah.
So trust in the workplace, I would say whether you're large or small companies, number 1, inspiring leaders, because without that, it doesn't work. Number 2, transparent communication. And number 3, I would say empowered colleagues.
Well, I would add shared values, a strong feeling of belonging, and as you said, it's empowerment.
I would say, though I agree with both of my fellow panelists, but for me it's psychological safety is absolutely critical. Always feeling included, and most importantly, always feeling respected.
So what's a great start for a session with those words. So let's talk about technology and AI, so which play really a central role in today's paradox between individualism and the need to belong. So Alexandra, in the financial services industry, do you believe generative AI can actually help foster cohesion in the workplace, or on the contrary, does it risk polarizing the workforce?
Thank you for the question. I think it's going to be a bit of both. So I think, first of all, Gen AI is here to stay, and we all have, as leaders or colleagues, we need to just live with it and make sure we benefit from it. It's here to stay, and it is going to disrupt our workplace in a very significant manner. And I would actually argue that it's going to help cohesion on multiple fronts in the workplace. So I'll give you 3 examples, but there is a but, which is coming. I'll give you one example, which is I think everybody knows that Gen AI, as it being implemented, reduces mundane tasks, repetitive tasks that everybody does. So of course you have more engaged employees because they're not bored, there is less burnout. So for sure it is going to help cohesion in the workplace. Number 2, I'm going to surprise you, but Gen AI does help to reduce the generation gap in companies, because people of my generation all of a sudden can have access to tools and applications that in the past they would have thought that they would never have had access. So it's definitely helping, number 2, cohesion in the workplace. Number 3, as another example, but again, there are so many, I think because thanks to Gen AI, training, for example, on the job is much more interesting, it can be tailor-made, and hence again, it helps cohesion because employees are more engaged. I could go on, but I would like to go for the but, i.e. the however. However, you're right, Béatrice, it can actually divide, and to avoid that, we need 3 or 4 things. Number 1, leaders that lead by example, by using Gen AI tools. Number 2, you need a lot of communication to explain and build what we call, and you've used the word AI trust, the AI trust. You need a lot of ethical guidelines and very robust risk assessment of what the Gen AI is going to do. Because I think everybody is trying to get on the train currently. We're not told, all of us, sure how we're going, so we have to be very mindful and very careful how we actually go about it.
Okay, thank you, Alexandra. It was really great insights. So now, let's shift to the world of industry. So Doris, in an increasingly factual world where people often mistrust new technology and lack AI, how can companies restore and build trust? Tell us.
Well, I think those who have read the Edelman Trust report know that, I mean, people trust more their employer than they would trust governments or politicians. So companies have a very important role to play to basically show not only the threats and fight against the threats of technology, the way how you described it, but also to show the benefits and give purpose to technology. At Siemens, technology is part of our mission statement. Actually, it is our mission statement is to combine the real and the digital world, so basically machines, humans, with software, with artificial intelligence, to address the big challenges of society in infrastructure, industry, and mobility, thanks to technology. So it's all about making good things out of technology. And I can share some examples. I mean, there are thousands. In the roundtable before, we were talking a lot about sustainability. So technology is, on the one side, a big reason for why we have, climate change, but it's also, I mean, the answer also lies in technology. At Siemens, we work a lot with digital twins in order to improve many things in a digital manner before doing it in the real world. So you can basically create a digital twin of a factory before building a real factory. And this allows you to optimize, for example, energy consumptions before you start, emitting. Another example, and we are talking here about humans, is also that we are convinced that AI can help to democratize the workplace. I give you an example, and I stay with production side. Today, or in the past, engineers, software developers were responsible for basically programming machines or for the intelligent part. Now, with artificial intelligence, operators that are running machines, thanks to technology, can really enrich their work because they can speak with machines in their natural language. They are not obliged anymore to master the complicated programming languages that they would need to master otherwise. So, and this helps us to address the labor shortage that we have in many places that makes work much more interesting for them. And the last example I would like to provide is on people development itself. On the one side, we are concerned that AI is, creating inequalities, but it can also help us actually take out bias from, for example, recruiting processes. In France, we are working with a tool that is enabled and that helps us basically screen our job offerings, taking out the bias words that could basically prevent people from diverse backgrounds to apply. And so we make sure that through this we are opening our job offerings to everyone. And another example is around people development, employability. We have a huge platform which is called Siemens Learning World, and their AI helps people to basically conceive their personalized learning journey and increases through that their employability. It could go on and go on, but this shows how tech can be used for good, and I think this is the role that companies play today.
Yes. So thank you, Doris. So we speak about cohesion, but cohesion cannot be possible without inclusion. So Emma, Deloitte runs an annual global survey of women in the workplace. So what did you discover this year about what's missing in today's work culture to create a more inclusive and cohesive environment for women?
Thank you. And I'm sort of taking it back to basics because I think, unfortunately, the basics are still missing. And I'm really privileged that I work for an organisation that not only invest in its own people, but we also try and lead the way by doing great research every year. And one of those reports is the Women at Work report. We're now in our 4th year of that. And I'm sorry, I'm going to throw some data at you, but I'm a great believer in the numbers and in data so we can actually see this. This is a survey of 5,000 women across 10 countries, not Deloitte women, but these are women in the workplace. And we asked them a number of questions about their lives outside the workplace and about their experiences in the workplace, because I truly believe that an organisation can say one thing, but it's actually the everyday experience that makes the difference. So just to set the scene, so only 1 in 10 women that we surveyed said they believe their organisation is taking concrete steps on gender equality. 17% think being a woman in their organisation is a disadvantage. 35% said, I'm sorry, I would not recommend my employer to any other women. And 47% say that they're worried about their personal safety at work or when they're traveling for work. And add to that the fact that the women we surveyed, most of them take on the bulk of household responsibilities and all the other things that we know to currently still be true. So just very quickly, I want to bring it back to trust and touch on four themes that really, or two themes that came out underpinned by 4 points. So sadly, what we've seen really for 4 years in a row are two critical themes: a lack of trust and really a concern about being open with your employer. And that manifests itself when it comes to mental health, women's health, flexible work, and reporting non-inclusive behaviours. So when it comes to mental health, for example, half the women we polled said, I feel more stressed than last year. Half the women we polled said, I'm worried or very worried about my mental health. And yet 2/3 of them said, I don't feel able to talk about mental health at work. Why not? It comes down to this lack of trust. They're worried, the impact on career progression. They're worried about discrimination that'll open them up to that. They're worried about layoffs. The same with women's health. Almost 3 in 10 women suffer from some sort of pain or symptoms associated with menstrual disorders, menopause, and or fertility challenges. Yet again, what do we see? We see a lack of disclosure, a lack of comfort in disclosing, again, due to concern about the outcomes. And then finally, just a couple of really big stats for you, which are really concerning. Flexible working, it's like Groundhog Day. Comes up year after year. You'd think we'd have got it right by now, but we still clearly haven't got it right. So flexible working, our data shows, is one of the top 3 reasons to stay with your job, flexible working and work-life balance, and one of the top 3 reasons to leave your employer. 93% of the women we polled say that they think that asking or taking advantage of flexible working will adversely impact their career. And round about the same number said, if I do it, my workload won't be adjusted. And then final point is around non-inclusive behaviours, so microaggressions, harassment, sexual harassment. 43% of women have experienced that in the last 12 months. That's over 2,000 women. But sadly, only sadly, 6 in 10 reported it, the others did not. Why not? Again, fear the behaviour could get worse, fear of being judged. So just to bring it back to where we started, and I'm sorry to chuck so much data at you, but this is so important that we've got this. And it shows us that lack of fundamental trust still is not where it needs to be, and I would argue that then leads on to a lack of trust in other things. It's something critical that we need to get right.
Okay, thank you. So yes, trust is crucial, and we really want to build inclusion and of course cohesion. But it can clash with changing work practices today. And so, Alexandra, with a global company like Lazard, where many teams work remotely, and how do you ensure a sense of belonging, equality, and unity across such a diverse workforce?
Okay, thank you. So just one word on working practices, because I think we are a fairly special company in that sense. We have decided back then to adapt our working practices in terms of working from home depending on our clients. So number one, it needs to work for the client. Number two, it works for the employer, and then for the employee. That means that depending on the country in which you operate, the working practices are different. It will be 3 days in the office in the US, 5 in Europe, and depending on the country, 4 in the UK, etc. However, it works, which we were not sure at the beginning when we implemented different working practices, which I think in itself is interesting. Experience has shown that it works extremely well, and we've reflected quite a lot in terms of why. And I think cohesion of any company, whether it's Lazard or all the ones in which you work, remote working works when you have shared vision and shared goals, for sure. Leaders that lead by example. Number 3, intentional and intensified communication. And communication can take many different shapes. I mean, it doesn't need to be just emails you receive every day, but it can mean different things to continue to repeat. I think you need to be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more intensified in your internal communication about your shared goals, about your shared visions, about your inspiring leaders. And then I would also say you have to be more intentional about team meetings, ways of coming back together. I do believe of being in the office, growth, actually, whatever you say. It does help creativity, it does help. So I think it's a question of balance and flexibility. And I have to say that the new generation coming into the workplace has understood that compared to 5, even 6 years ago. That has really shifted in terms of what they are demanding and how we're addressing all those. So I'm sure we'll have different and shared experience. But we're all learning and continuing. Everybody, there are plenty of reports, but I think it has to be, there is no one size fits all. We just need to be smart. And for all of us, it needs to work for our clients first, whether you have external or internal clients.
Oh, great, thank you. So, Emma, turning back to you, how does Deloitte manage to create this inclusive culture where women can succeed? And so, especially in this new workplace that needs to balance fostering a sense of belonging with embracing diversity.
Yeah, and Alexandra, I loved what you were saying about flexible working, because that's so important to make that work. And I think a lot of it is about trust on both sides. It's about, it's a deal between the organisation and what's needed. Look, from our perspective, you heard my CEO, Joe, on that film earlier. I can tell you it really is a leadership priority. So we have goals, accountability. Only last week we were in a meeting with the leaders of our largest member firms, talking about, right, what do we need to do collectively? How can we take action? And this is something that absolutely, DEI, it's my job, but it's not my responsibility. It is the responsibility of all our leaders. So I think that's really embedded into what we do. We have a real focus on inclusion and inclusive culture, and not just talking about it, but actually, living it and making sure that all our leaders understand the power and benefits of inclusive leadership. On women's equity, so to your question about women in particular, that word equity, we understand that equity has to be involved to get equality, and that means doing some very specific things, and we are very comfortable to do that. And then finally, I would just say, it doesn't just end at our walls. So externally, I'm really proud that most of the things that we create for our organisation, we release. So if you look on Deloitte.com, you'll see the amazing immersive experiences. Check out Julia and Anton's story. It's really good. So anything we create, we try and put it out there, because I recognise that not every organisation has the resources to hand that we do. And then things like the Women at Work report. So it's really a focus internally and then also externally.
Okay, thank you. So our central topic today is about reconciliation. So Doris, from your experience at Siemens and beyond, so what action need to be taken to reconcile business with society from a people-focused perspective?
I think many things have said. It's all about building trust, creating shared values, and this across countries. And for us, that notion of belonging is essential. Why? Because belonging means if you want, you belong if you can identify with the company that you're working with. And identification means there are some others that resemble me in different facets. So what can an organization do to create that identity? A company needs to reflect the diversity of society. So what does this mean, diversity? Diversity is not an objective. Diversity is a fact. We have diverse countries, men, women, different colors, different sexual orientations, whatever. So diversity is a fact. But then comes into the play the objectives that we set ourselves. This is equity. For example, at Siemens, we have the objective of having at least 30% of women in senior leadership positions and 30% of women in business functions, not only support functions. In France, for example, we right now have 40% of women in our executive management team. Beyond that, we have set country-specific goals in terms of objective, because we know we have a big issue with filling the pipeline with female talents. So we define as objective having parity, 50% girls in our apprenticeship campaigns, because through this we fill up our internal funnel. We started 3 years ago with 20%, today we are at 40, and I'm fighting for getting to the 50. And these are inclusion measures, because equity is an objective and inclusion are all the measures we put into place, we take action about having more women in the workplace, about creating a working environment that is more adapted to people with disabilities, for creating actions for employees that are caretakers. That's also a big issue in society because they have elderly parents, for example. So this all together creates the feeling of belonging and identity. And let me just end with one thing, and I think it was also said before, I think we cannot do this on our own, each of our companies. We need to do this in an ecosystem, and I'm very proud to speak today on behalf of 70,000 other French companies that are part of the public interest organization Les Entreprises s'engagent, which means companies engage, because together from the small company somewhere, you know, in the southern part of France to the big corporation here in Paris, together we take concrete action to work for a more diverse workplace and for a more inclusive workplace. And this makes us, I mean, stronger together, and this is how we act all together as corporate citizens.
Okay, thank you. So now I would like to ask each of you kind of final words. So what would be your top piece of advice for crafting trust, cohesion, and share value in the workplace? So how can company today and in the future become a real place of true reconciliation? Alexandra?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
So I'm allowed to one word, so I'm going to
No.
Communication. I have no transparent communication will allow a cohesive workplace, will allow shared values, will allow inspiring leaders to come forward. So if I'm allowed to one word, it will definitely be in 54 seconds for my colleagues. Definitely transparent communication and intentional communication. And I want to thank all the people in all the organization, and of course in Lazard's organization, who work in communication that help us to indeed keep the cohesive workplace.
Well, I would add to that, leading by example. I mean, it's very important that this topic, it's not diversity is not a topic of the HR department. We need to lead by examples and do it in a way that others like to copy you with pride.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, look, we have to have the right policies, we have to have the right processes in place, but those can all be undermined by a raised eyebrow from a leader, by a throwaway comment, by the things probably every single one of us in this room has experienced at some stage in our career. So I would say we all need to be aware of the impact of our words and our actions, and we all need to every day practice inclusion and be respectful in everything we do.
Okay. And so many thanks to all of three of you for your outstanding contribution. I'm sure as we are coming back home with ID and ID for action in companies and beyond. So many thanks again.
Yes, we get it. Thank you very much for a wonderful discussion. Communication, the power of words. I can only agree with your conclusion, ladies. Thank you very much indeed.